Hello, I'm Rebecca Jones. Come with me behind the headlines into the biggest stories shaping Australia's place in global business. This is the Bloomberg Australia podcast.
DroneShield's seeing it moving higher after it had its results coming out, but you're taking a look there at that expansive rally year to date. You're talking about gains of more than 500%.
One of the most exciting ASX stories in recent years has been the evolution of DroneShield.
We started to develop what we believe is the largest library of its kind of drone signals around the world.
Australia's defence tech sector has just produced one of the most extraordinary success stories on the ASX. It's a company called DroneShield. Once seen as a niche player, it's now supplying counter-drone technology to militaries and governments all around the world. This week on the Bloomberg Australia podcast, we unpack how DroneShield went from meme stock to military mainstay, what its rise says about the future of Australia's defence tech industry, and whether or not the company can sustain this kind of momentum. To help me answer these questions, I'm delighted to be joined by Bloomberg's Sydney Bureau Chief, Ainslie Chandler. Ainslie, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Ainslie, you interviewed DroneShield's CEO, Oleg Vornik, recently. How would you rate your knowledge of drones going into that interview?
My knowledge was pretty basic going in, and I have to say coming out, probably still fairly basic, but I definitely have a better grasp on the business case for counter-drone technology now.
It's not really something that we use in our everyday life, right? I mean, I think to me it makes more sense that it's a military tool. I do have some experience with competitive local real estate agents in my area flying over to take photos of neighbouring properties that are for sale, but you know what? It helps them get a better price. Whatever it takes, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure DroneShield's allowed to take those ones down. I think the ones that they're dealing with are doing some more nefarious things than that.
And so I think this does tell us something, though, that we should start with the very, very basics about this company. What exactly is DroneShield and what does it do?
So DroneShield's a company that specialises in hardware and software relating to counter-drone technology. So essentially, they're the tools that they use to take down drones. And they've found a really big niche in military, in frontline kind of battle situations in the last few years, especially since the Ukraine-Russia conflict.
So it's only about 10 years old, this company, right? Who are the founders? What do we know about them?
Yeah, the founders were Brian Herring and John Franklin. They're two US-based researchers, and they founded the company thinking that they would be, stopping paparazzi from flying drones over people's swimming pools and things like that. It's gone in a direction they probably couldn't have seen when they founded the company, to be honest. They're two quite interesting guys in themselves. Their first idea for a big company was to use lasers to take down mosquitoes in your bedroom. So they've pivoted a little bit and you would say found a bit more success with DroneShield.
So they're not still pursuing that one, because I tell you, if they need an angel investor, I will give out my email address on air. I hate that sound, but, lasers in the bedroom is probably not a good fit, right?
Well, I think, drones on the front line, taking them down is probably a little bit more important at the moment than taking down some mosquitoes in your bedroom, though you may disagree.
Yes, but from a geopolitical stand, I tend to agree with you, Ainslie. Now, the CEO, Oleg Vornik, has been raising his profile quite broadly recently, right? And he's got an interesting backstory too.
Yes, he's been doing the rounds and trying to really shore up support for DroneShield. He himself was born in Russia and migrated to New Zealand with his mother. He was somewhat of a maths whiz and ended up in investment banking, which he described as being a glorified secretary. He really didn't like the kind of day-to-day of being an investment banker, and he ended up getting recruited to be DroneShield's CFO. And now he is the CEO.
And as you say, he's leading a company that's had, such expansive growth, gains of more than 500% this year. We had Oleg Vornik on Bloomberg TV this week after DroneShield's earnings on Monday. This is what he had to say.
We're continuing to rapidly accelerate with our customer adoption. When we started 10 years ago, there was really no demand for counter-drone to speak of. Now, militaries as well as increasingly civilian customers are saying drones and nefarious activity are for real, but unfortunately we have really not much in counter-drone technology deployed. So for the last couple of years, since it's really came on radar of a lot of our customers since the start of Ukraine war, customers started to evaluate the counter-drone technologies and now are moving into rapid adoption cycle. But we are still the very early days, but we're seeing those increased large purchases, which is showing through our quarterly results, which are continuing to get stronger every quarter.
Vornik referenced the Ukraine war here, and obviously conflict is one of the key reasons for the increase in growth. I asked Bloomberg stocks reporter Carmeli Argana, one of Ainslie's team in the Sydney bureau, about what else has helped its development. Carmeli told me that defence contracts that DroneShield has secured this year, 2 last month with the US worth almost 8 million Aussie dollars, and a couple of months before that there was a set of European contracts worth more than 60 million. They had buoyed confidence in the company. Here's what else has helped.
Another thing to know is that DroneShield just joined Australia's main stock index, the ASX 200, in September. That's a milestone that's brought major ETF providers like BlackRock and State Street onto the register, joining heavyweights like Vanguard and Fidelity. That helps give the company a new level of credibility.
Carmeli also told me that not everyone is convinced, especially when looking at the company's fundamentals. Here she is again to explain.
Analysts are expecting more room for the stock to grow. Bell Potter, for example, one of 2 firms covering DroneShield that Bloomberg tracks, raised its price target to $5.30 after the company's latest quarterly results. Still, that big gap between DroneShield, the highest valuations among the ASX 200's members, and the ASX 200's valuation, well, that's running at around 25. Concerns remain on the stock being too expensive or might not be able to live up to such high expectations.
Great expectations indeed. Ainslie, it's not the first time the shares have rocketed. What is different this time?
Yeah, DroneShield found itself at the mercy of day traders in 2024. The share price went up really rapidly and it was a meme stock. And Oleg Vornik told us at the time he wasn't so much upset with the price it reached. It was more just the speed at which it was reaching it and, what was driving it. So that calmed down a bit towards the back end of 2024. They've obviously had huge share price growth this year, but he's sort of saying he's much more comfortable with this. They've reached the ASX 200. They've got a lot more institutional backing. So it's a lot more stable in terms of the share price and whether it's going to go up or down rapidly.
When we come back, we'll look at what happens to defence tech companies in times of peace and why the CEO of DroneShield sold his shares right before they took off. Stay with us. This is the Bloomberg Australia podcast. Welcome back to the Bloomberg Australia podcast. You're here with me, Rebecca Jones, and Sydney Bureau Chief Ainslie Chandler. We're discussing the success story that is ASX-listed company DroneShield. Let us now hear a little bit more from CEO Oleg Vornik talking to us this week on Bloomberg Television.
Europe is by far the largest share of our sales. So today it's accounting for about 40% of our revenues, but we are present in about 50 countries around the world. So US continues to contribute. We have presence in Virginia and we serve a number of defense, homeland security, law enforcement and intelligence customers there. We're seeing quite strong demand from South America, where we're supporting government customers fighting drug cartels, and we're seeing quite a lot of demand in Asia Pacific, where a number of our customers are concerned about the rise of drones, Chinese drones, essentially all of China neighbors. So all of that is combining together into a very significant wave of interest.
Ainslie, those are some interesting growth markets he's just mentioned. And, it seems they are expecting some strong growth in civilian uses for their product. Can you talk us through that?
Yes. So he told us that of the about $60 billion addressable market for their products, about half of that are civilian applications. So while demand for their technology has really been driven by the use of drones on the front line in wars, there's also a lot of kind of civilian facilities that want this kind of protection, as airports, big event spaces. There was sort of some technology to stop the drug gangs there from dropping grenades with drones. So there's a lot of different people around the world who are finding themselves at the mercy of drones and are looking for support in how to take them down.
And I mean, this company, as we've said, has had a massive surge in growth on the back of essentially war. How ready are they for that pivot if there is, a sudden outbreak of peace? What did Vornek tell you about their preparedness in that respect?
Well, he's really confident that drones aren't going anywhere in terms of frontline combat. He was talking about the front lines in Ukraine, where basically there's no people patrolling these front lines. There's just drones. So any kind of vehicle that you're going to put into that space needs to have counter-drone technology. All these civilian applications that, they've discussed, they're all going to need counter-drone technology going forward. And he also mentioned, governments do like to stockpile this kind of thing in times of peace, so it can act as a deterrent for war. So, they would much prefer to invest in this now to deter war than actually, use it when they're actually in war. So they're confident going forward that there's going to be demand for their product.
And finally, look, a lot has been made of the fact that the CEO sold down his shares in the company right before they really took off. What did he say about that?
He told us he tries not to have regrets about it, which is, of course, what you would say. But his is a very Sydney story. This company it's based in Sydney. They operate just on the outskirts of Sydney. And he took his money and he bought a house in Sydney. So I think anyone that lives here knows that takes a big chunk of change. He also told us that even though he sold those shares, he still needed a mortgage. So it's a very, very Sydney story.
I was going to say, it sounds like you probably just managed to extract enough to get a deposit on a nice little two-bedder in the eastern suburbs or something like that. Ainslie, Chandler, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
If you found today's conversation insightful, be sure to follow the Bloomberg Australia podcast wherever you listen and check for more reading on Australia's defence tech industry, including the latest reporting from Ainslie, Chandler and Carmeli Argana on Bloomberg.com. This episode was recorded on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri and Gadigal people. It was produced by Mariful Hussain and edited by Chris Burke. I'm Rebecca Jones and I'll see you next week.